The World War II submarine that went down in battle, the American families back here at home with so many questions, what a team of explorers just found.
For 75 years, the ocean kept its mouth shut. No distress signal ever pierced the static. No oil slick stained the waves. No floating debris drifted onto distant shores. One moment, a U.S. Navy submarine was alive with engine noise, voices, and routine discipline. The next, it was gone, erased as if it had never existed at all. 80 men vanished with it, swallowed by the Pacific without warning, explanation, or closure. For decades, their fate lingered as one of World War II's most haunting mysteries, a ghost story written in salt water and silence. But now, buried deep beneath the waves, the truth has finally surfaced. And what it reveals is far more terrifying than anyone imagined. The day the Greyback sailed into oblivion. On January 28, 1944, the USS Greyback slipped away from Pearl Harbor and pointed its bow toward hostile waters, beginning what would be its 10th combat patrol. By that point in the war, the Greyback was no rookie vessel, and its crew was no collection of green sailors. These men had already stalked enemy shipping lanes, fired torpedoes in the dark, and survived encounters that would have broken lesser crews. They understood the risks intimately, yet like every submarine crew in the Pacific, they carried a quiet confidence born of repetition and discipline. Each patrol followed familiar rhythms, checks, drills, watch rotations, routines designed to keep fear at bay in an environment where one mistake could mean death. The mission itself was straightforward on paper: patrol near Japan, disrupt supply routes, gather intelligence, and return. But nothing about submarine warfare in World War II was forgiving. These boats were not the sleek, silent predators of modern naval movies. They ran on diesel engines and depended on massive battery banks that needed regular recharging. To recharge those batteries, the submarine had to surface, exposing itself to enemy aircraft and patrols. When submerged, the Greyback was lethal and nearly invisible. When surfaced, it was dangerously vulnerable, a steel target floating in hostile skies. Somewhere during that patrol, the routine shattered. Days passed without word. Then, weeks. No radio transmission came through, no emergency signal was logged. No friendly vessel reported spotting wreckage or survivors. It was as if the Greyback had been plucked from the sea by an invisible hand and erased from reality. 2 months later, the Navy made the grim decision to list the submarine as missing and presumed lost. 80 names were added to a growing ledger of the disappeared, their final moments unknown, their resting place unmarked. In war, death is expected. What haunted families was not death itself, but the absence of answers. The Greyback hadn't exploded in a visible fireball or left behind shattered hull fragments. It had simply vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions that would echo for generations. Families left with questions and a war that never ended. For the families back home, the war did not end with victory parades or newspaper headlines. It lingered in empty chairs, unopened letters, and unanswered prayers. Mothers stared out at the ocean, wondering where their sons had gone and whether they had suffered. Wives raised children who would never know their fathers, clinging to the hope that maybe, somehow, there had been a mistake. Fathers kept uniforms neatly folded in closets, medals tucked away in drawers, preserving proof that their sons had once walked the earth. The Navy's official record stated that the Greyback had gone down roughly 100 miles southeast of Okinawa, and so that was where the world focused its search. Over the years, expedition after expedition ventured into those waters, armed with sonar, diving equipment, and determination. Millions of dollars were spent combing the seafloor. Crews battled violent currents, storms, and crushing depths, risking their lives in the hope of finding even a fragment of wreckage. Time after time, they returned empty-handed, bringing back nothing but footage of sand, darkness, and endless black water. As the decades passed and the ocean yielded no answers, imagination rushed in to fill the void. Rumors began to circulate, whispered first in private and later shouted in books and documentaries. Some claimed the Greyback had never sunk at all, suggesting the crew had mutinied under the unbearable pressure of war and fled to a neutral country in South America. Others insisted something more sinister had occurred, pointing to Japan's development of terrifying weapons like chitin, human-guided torpedoes piloted by men on self-harm missions. Perhaps, they said, the Greyback had been the first victim of an underwater attack so secret the U.S. Navy never even knew it existed. Then came the paranormal explanations. The submarine had vanished not far from the infamous Dragon's Triangle, often called the Pacific's version of the Bermuda Triangle, a region long associated with strange lights, electronic failures, and ships lost under impossible circumstances. Some speculated that the Greyback had slipped through a tear in reality itself, swallowed by forces beyond human understanding. For 75 years, these theories were all anyone had. Myths layered over grief, speculation built on silence. But the real truth, when it finally emerged, was neither supernatural nor mysterious. It was simpler, colder, and far more painful. The Greyback hadn't been hidden by monsters, mutiny, or cosmic anomalies. It had been hidden by a single devastating mistake. The single digit that erased a grave from history. The truth, when it finally surfaced, was almost insulting in its simplicity. The USS Greyback had not been lost to mutiny, monsters, or supernatural forces. It had been lost to a typo. After the war ended, the United States seized vast archives of Japanese Imperial Navy radio logs, meticulous daily records that documented attacks, sightings, and coordinates with ruthless precision. Among them was a report dated February 27, 1944, written by a Japanese carrier pilot who described attacking a surfaced American submarine with a 500-pound bomb. The pilot recorded the latitude and longitude carefully, proud of his hit, confident that he had sent an enemy vessel to the bottom. But when that report was translated into English in 1946, something went wrong. One number in the longitude was misread, mistyped, or misunderstood. Just a single digit. That one error shifted the recorded location by roughly 100 miles. In the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, that difference is enormous. For 75 years, every expedition, every sonar sweep, and every deep-sea search had been aimed at an empty patch of ocean, while the real grave lay untouched, silent, and forgotten, far beyond the search zone. The tragedy is not just that the submarine was lost, but that it never had to remain lost. The technology existed, the resources existed, the determination existed. But the map was wrong, and no one questioned it. It makes you wonder how many other wrecks, how many other missing ships are still hidden behind similar clerical ghosts, waiting for someone to notice what everyone else overlooked. The engineer who cracked 75 years of silence. That someone was Yutaka Iwasaki, a Japanese systems engineer with no background in treasure hunting, no military rank, and no intention of rewriting naval history. His hobby was simple and unglamorous: reading old military documents. In 2018, while reviewing original Japanese naval records written in kanji, Iwasaki noticed something that didn't sit right. The coordinates in the original report did not match the coordinates listed in official U.S. Navy history books. He checked again, then again. The discrepancy remained. The American records listed the longitude as 127 degrees east, while the Japanese report clearly stated 128 degrees east. 1 degree, one mistake. 100 miles of error. In that moment, Iwasaki realized that every search since 1946 had been doomed from the start. The Greyback hadn't been hiding. It had been ignored by accident. Iwasaki understood the weight of what he had found, and he knew exactly who needed to hear it. He contacted Tim Taylor, the leader of the Lost 52 Project, an elite initiative dedicated to finding all 52 American submarines lost during World War II. When Taylor saw the data, he didn't hesitate. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't theory. This was the smoking gun. Knowing where to look was only half the battle. The other half was surviving the ocean long enough to confirm it. Taylor's team deployed aboard the RV Petrel, a vessel packed with some of the most advanced deep-sea technology ever built. At the heart of the mission was an autonomous underwater vehicle, a robotic explorer programmed to descend into darkness and map the seafloor using side-scan sonar. The East China Sea is not a gentle place. Its floor is jagged and unpredictable, scarred by volcanic rock, deep trenches, and shifting sediment. On sonar, a submarine does not always look like a submarine. It can resemble a rock formation, a whale carcass, or modern debris fallen from cargo ships. For days, the team scanned the abyss, downloading hours of gray, grainy data that blurred together and played tricks on tired minds. The tension on board grew heavy. Some crew members whispered about the old sailor's superstition that certain ships do not want to be found, that the ocean protects its dead. Out there, thousands of miles from land, surrounded by black water and towering waves, it was easy to believe in curses. But Tim Taylor trusted the math. He trusted the coordinates. And then the sonar returned something unmistakable, a hard return, metal.
And now, earlier this year, using that new information, private explorers were able to locate the wreck 1,400 feet under the surface of the water. This is important on this day in particular because for the 80 families who lost a service person on that submarine.
At a depth of 1,400 feet, far beyond the reach of human divers, something artificial rested on the seafloor. The remotely operated vehicle was deployed, its lights piercing a darkness untouched by sunlight. As the video feed flickered to life, the control room fell silent. First came mud, then a strange shape, and finally the unmistakable curve of a pressure hull. The USS Greyback was standing upright on its keel, proud and intact, as if refusing to lie down even in death. Cheers erupted. Some crew members cried openly. History had just been corrected. 75 years of uncertainty collapsed into a single undeniable image. But the celebration ended almost immediately, because as the camera drifted closer, the mood shifted. This was not just a wreck. It was a frozen moment of violence, a crime scene sealed in steel and silence, and what the cameras revealed next would haunt everyone who saw it. The open hatch and the fight that never finished. The drone glided toward the conning tower, and the damage was impossible to miss. A massive crater scarred the structure, confirmation that a 500-pound bomb had struck with deadly precision. But it wasn't the hole that terrified the team, it was what surrounded it. The deck gun was still swung outward, aimed at the sky. This single detail rewrote the final moments of the Greyback. They hadn't been fleeing. They had been fighting. In the chaos of those final seconds, the crew faced an impossible decision. Dive and hope the bomber missed, or stay surfaced and shoot it down. The evidence suggested they tried to do both. And then the camera revealed the detail that chilled the room to silence. The forward hatch was open. Not blown open, left open. That meant men were still on the bridge when the bomb hit. Or worse, they were scrambling down the ladder when the explosion jammed the hatch shut. Water would have rushed in instantly, flooding the boat as the dive planes forced it downward. The submarine did not gently sink. It plummeted, dragged by gravity and water pressure into the abyss like a stone dropped into a well. And if the pressure hull held, even briefly, then something far more disturbing may have happened next. When a submarine sinks intact, air becomes trapped inside. As it descends, pressure builds, but death does not always come instantly. The Greyback's hull appeared largely intact, except for the destroyed tower, raising a horrifying possibility. The crew may have been alive during the descent, thrown violently through compartments as the submarine spiraled downward, lights flickering out, emergency red bulbs glowing weakly, metal groaning as the ocean squeezed the steel inward. They would have known exactly what was happening. For the explorers watching the footage, the realization felt like a physical blow. This was not a wreck where life ended in an instant of fire. This was a vessel where men may have lived all the way to the bottom, fighting systems, valves, and controls until the very end. And when the drone peered into the breach, it revealed something that confirmed their worst fears. Inside the hull was not chaos, it was order. And what they found frozen inside the Greyback would become one of the most haunting images in naval history. The final descent and the promise kept. When the remotely operated vehicle drifted closer to the breach in the hull, the mood aboard the research vessel changed in an instant. The excitement of discovery faded, replaced by a heavy, almost reverent silence. Everyone watching the monitors understood the weight of what they were about to witness. This was no longer about finding metal on the sea floor. This was a place where 80 men had lived their final moments, a war grave sealed in darkness. As the lights pierced the interior of the submarine, what appeared on screen was not chaos, not twisted bodies piled in desperation, not the violent aftermath people expected. Instead, there was order, stillness, a frozen moment preserved by cold, pressure, and time. The control room looked eerily intact. Instruments were still in place. Gauges sat quietly where hands had last touched them. It felt as though the Greyback had been paused mid-breath. Then the team noticed what would haunt them long after the expedition ended. The remains of the crew were still at their battle stations. In the engine room, sailors lay near the machinery they had fought to control. In the torpedo room, men remained close to the tubes, guarding weapons they never got to fire. In the control room, officers were positioned near valves, dials, and levers, as if still trying to save the boat. There were no bodies clawing toward escape hatches, no signs of panic-driven collapse. These men had not run, they had stayed. In submarine warfare, leaving your post means condemning everyone else. Even as the Greyback plunged uncontrollably toward the bottom, even as water poured in and pressure crushed the steel around them, these men chose duty over instinct. Boots were still laced, belts still fastened, tools remained clipped at waists. Headphones rested on sonar tables as though someone had just stepped away for a second and never returned. It was discipline in its purest, most devastating form. What made the scene even more unsettling was how well everything had been preserved. Normally, the ocean devours its dead. Scavengers strip flesh. Currents scatter bones. Time erases identities. But inside the sealed hull of the Greyback, nature had worked differently. At 1,400 feet, the water was near freezing. No sunlight penetrated. Oxygen was scarce. Large predators could not enter. Over decades, silt settled gently over the interior like a burial cloth. The bodies underwent a process called saponification, where fat transforms into a waxy, soap-like substance that preserves shape. The explorers were not looking at scattered skeletons. They were looking at forms that still resembled men. This was too much for some of the crew. A few quietly stepped away from the screens. Others stared, unable to speak. It felt less like exploration and more like intrusion. Tim Taylor made the decision then and there. The drone would not go any further inside. Nothing would be touched. Nothing would be disturbed. This was not a museum. This was not a salvage site. It was a grave, and it would be treated with respect. The footage also silenced decades of conspiracy theories. There was no gold hidden aboard the Greyback, no secret cargo, no stolen technology, just diesel engines, torpedoes, steel bulkheads, and 80 sailors who were trying to survive. The myths collapsed under the weight of reality. The Greyback hadn't been carrying secrets. It had been carrying men who wanted to go home. As the team continued scanning the surrounding seafloor, another detail emerged. About 50 yards from the main wreck lay scattered debris, torn metal plating hurled outward by force. This suggested the submarine had not been destroyed by a single lucky hit. The evidence pointed to a second attack, a double tap. In aerial warfare, pilots are trained to circle back. If a target smokes, you make sure it stays down. The Japanese pilot likely returned, dropping another bomb or strafing the deck with machine gun fire as the Greyback tried to fight back. This explained why the deck gun was unmanned when the fatal blast hit. The gun crew may already have been killed. This was not chance. It was systematic destruction. For many families, this brought a strange kind of peace. For years, there had been whispers that the Greyback might have been sunk by friendly fire, an accident buried under wartime secrecy. The wreck proved otherwise. The damage matched Japanese ordnance precisely. Their loved ones were not lost to a mistake. They were lost in battle. As the mission neared its end, the drone's sensors picked up eerie sounds in the deep, low hums, distant clicks, long, echoing calls. Online, some would later claim these were monsters, aliens, or something ancient lurking in the abyss. The truth was simpler. They were whales, migrating through deep ocean channels that carried sound like a megaphone, their songs echoing off underwater canyons. No kraken, no mystery creature, just life continuing around a monument of death. The Greyback itself had become an artificial reef. Crabs crawled across torpedo tubes. Anemones clung to steel. The ocean had reclaimed the war machine and turned it into part of its ecosystem. The war was over. Nature had moved on. Before leaving the site, the crew of the research vessel gathered on deck. One by one, they read aloud the names of all 80 sailors. After each name, a bell rang. 80 times. Then a wreath was lowered into the water, floating briefly as a splash of color against the endless gray sea before drifting away. "We brought them home," Tim Taylor said quietly. "Not physically. The Greyback will remain where it lies. The U.S. Navy considers it a protected war grave. It is illegal to salvage it, illegal to disturb it. And that is how it should be. Some places are meant to be remembered, not relocated." The discovery of the Greyback changed more than one story. It proved that a single typo can hide history for generations. It raised ethical questions about how we treat underwater graves, and it reignited the search for the 41 other submarines still missing from World War II. Somewhere out there, more families are still waiting. We are entering a golden age of deep-sea exploration. The technology is improving. The darkness is retreating. The ocean is vast, but it is not infinite. And for the ghosts of the Pacific War, the lights are finally turning on. This mission was never about twisted metal or coordinates on a map. It was about a promise that if you go into harm's way, you will never be forgotten. No matter how long it takes, no matter how deep you lie. The question now is a difficult one. With the technology to find these underwater graves, should we bring the fallen home, or should they remain where they rest? Let me know what you think. Because some stories don't end when the screen fades to black. They wait. If this story thrilled you, tap like, subscribe for more hidden history, and share your thoughts in the comments. Some stories shouldn't stay buried, and neither should the people who lived them.